So then for a final business case, I'm going to ask the wonderful cooperation of two of the largest banks in the Netherlands. There are not that many, but for banks to collaborate is a very good thing. And in fact, please join me on stage already. I'm going to introduce you later. Money 2020, Ralph Hamers gave an excellent opening address, and I'm not being paid for this, but it was a really good address. And he really said, if you want to have a relevant ecosystem as a bank, and you in an open banking world, you have to be able and to be big enough to let competitors in and to cooperate with others. And I always make the analogy with a relationship. You can have a wonderful relationship in which you feel secure, but no partner can give everything to the other one. You need friends and other people around you to sort of add to the mix. So, next, and thank you for your flexibility, because I've moved you around without knowing it really probably, but you figured out, oh, we were not quite in the spot that we were supposed to be, but we were taking care of the travel arrangements of some of our speakers. So thank you for that. So with me I have Rutger and Arnoud. Arnoud works with ING, and Rutger works exactly with ABN AMRO, and you're both very much in trading, commodity trading, and we're going to look at a beautiful example of how you get, in a free, fair and transparent way, we get the soybeans from the US to China or the other way around. Yes?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You have the clicker or the... Connie, do you have a... for the presentation?
Yeah,
sorry. Oh yeah, no worries. All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the welcome, the warm welcome. Indeed, we're two big banks. There are many, but we are two of them, and we're friends today, and hopefully also for the future. And what we're going to tell you is a bit of a story, and the story is of blockchain coming to the commodities sector. So we'll tell you a bit about the commodities themselves, how the sector looks like, and why it's such a fertile ground for blockchain. You'll see how we experimented within that industry, and how that was a proven concept that we delivered on. And that's also interesting to where do you take it from there. So you want to build a process around it, a platform or production, something of that nature. So take it to a more mature level. So we're going to talk you through the whole chain of events. And just to give you a bit of a picture of what commodities is, you've seen WeTrade, for instance. They're looking at the whole trade finance industry throughout the whole world. We're really focused on commodities. And commodities, just a very short note on that, they're bulk products, they're raw materials. You've got agriculture, soya beans coming from Brazil, sugar from Brazil flowing to China. You've got energy, you've got oil, you've got metals. Really the bulk commodity products, that's what we're focusing on. And this is a bit of a high-level overview of some trade flows. And why is that so interesting? Well, that's what you can see on the next page. It's a very, very complex chain of events, which is happening. What you see here on the left-hand side, you see seller, and on the right-hand side, buyer. It looks quite straightforward, very simple. It's not. Just to get that product from the seller to the buyer, many steps, many events need to take place. And it's just not between two parties. Within the flow of commodities, you even can have multiple sellers and multiple buyers within a certain trade flow. But not just sellers and buyers, you've got warehouses, as you can see. Goods flow to warehouses, go to the ports, they're stored there. You have to have inspectors, insurance, banks play a role. So many people playing a part in the whole chain, and so many legal titles involved in that process. And that's what you can see there below. You've got bills of lading, truck receipts, you name it, you have it. It's a complex world. So that's in a nutshell commodities, and that's why it's a fertile ground. We intuitively know that it's a fertile ground, but here you can just see the conclusions of BCG. They took a cold, hard view at the sector, and they saw that, listen guys, 98% of all the data that you guys are transmitting, it doesn't really add value. So we knew it, but that's also, again, quite a wake-up call. So what you see is, on the left-hand side, a lot of industry problems. There's a lack of trust, there's no transparency, it's a low-margin industry, it's paper-heavy, labor-intensive. We have a lot of people actually doing labor work just to get everything done on a daily basis. And there's the fourth revolution, there's technology emerging. So let's bring those two together, and from that, we built the story of actions. And like I told you, we're coming together as an industry. That's why we're working together. We're delivering on proven concepts, and then we move on to real production. And I think we've got some nice examples, and Arnoud will walk you through these examples. Arnoud, if I give you...
Sure.
I think we tested everything in advance, which should go right.
Well in advance, but
Fingers
3 minutes
crossed.
to go. Yeah. Let's see if there's a movie. We have a movie that we'd like to start with to show you, to make it a bit more tangible.
2018 Easy Trading Connect. 8 commodity players tested a fully digitized platform using blockchain to handle the cycle of a soybean shipment to China. This new technology offers security, trusted digital ledger, strong anti-fraud features, protection against cyber attacks, efficiency, a single entry for each data item with all data available on the same platform, real-time transaction monitoring from start to finish, auto-match function to reduce task duplication and document verification. Transforming commodity trading practices. Time spent on processing documents and data has been reduced 5-fold. One single platform available to all actors. Real-time sizing of working capital. We're setting tomorrow's rules today. Get ready to take the next step.
Click. Next one. Okay. So this is the subject of this movie was based on an experiment that we did together with Louis Dreyfuss and one of their counterparties, Bohai in China. Dreyfuss is one of the largest commodity houses in the world. We took this topic of soybeans cargo trade from the USA to China, not because that was the best one to do, but that was what was available in the season. We wanted to trial this transaction live in on the platform. And with the experiment, we want to learn a couple of things. We had done some before where we proved that if you do something digital, it's more efficient than paper-based, so that was an obvious outcome of that experiment. But here we wanted to really test the boundaries of this technology. How far can we go? How far can we take it close to production? What is the actual metrics impact that we can achieve? And what are some of the implementation hurdles that we'll find? And if you look at the technology from a validation perspective, we really need to address this privacy aspect. So we work with on the quorum after selection process, use that technology. And in the same breath, we need to say that basically, as the technologies are evolving, we also need to be prepared to change horses at some point. And we did an experiment where we say, okay, how much work will it take to replace the entire smart contract layer on quorum with one on Corda? And in the end, was one guy for a week and a half who didn't have that much to do. So it can be done quite fast still, as we are here today, and it shows that a lot of the effort in these projects goes into the user experiments, the product design, etc., etc. In terms of implementation hurdles, we discovered a number of things. We figured out how to work with regulators. We had all the actors involved in this transaction, all the data to the lowest level of detail. We worked with the Department of Agriculture in the US, and we figured out government institutions, they're not going to onboard the platform, use them as an oracle, they're building their own system. But we also figured out that this type of platform goes too fast. And I'll get back to that at the end, because there's a bit of an explanation in that, or otherwise if we don't get to it, ask me later. But it shows that we had a massive efficiency improvement on the corporate side, a factor 5, which was really an inspiration for the corporates to say, oh, hang on, let's get together as an industry and build an agri-platform, most likely. And that has a predecessor. In parallel, we worked together with some of the largest companies in the world. We had 3 banks, we had 3 large energy traders, 3 majors, oil majors. inspired by the work that we've done beforehand, and we basically set up a company at the end of last year. We capitalized it with sufficient funds for the first phase, and they're building an MVP, which will go live at the end of this year, basically to facilitate the post-trade settlement of physical energy transactions as a first use case. To get there, you can imagine there's a lot of people, we had 100, 150 people working on that project from all the different companies to validate the value proposition, to develop the business model, to look at the antitrust aspects, the legal setup, the incorporation itself, and create an investment proposal. That journey took a lot of effort, but the real collaborative effort also created the trust that we needed in that to achieve that. We'll see how this company progresses over the next 6 months as it marches to go live, but it's definitely an inspiration and shows what this industry can do if you come together as really fierce competitors. That was it.
We can talk on a long time, but our time's up.
I was
Have we got some more
waiting
time?
for more, but no, and I'm already brimming with questions because you say too fast, and immediately I get sneaky and I say too fast for a banker or too fast for the industry?
Too fast for the industry, and if you look at the way this business works, a lot of it is about working capital. So you have a sell side that creates documents that get shipped by a courier, that get checked by a bank, takes 5 days at maximum. So it takes a long time. All that time, the cargo, which can be $100 million, sits on the balance sheet of the seller. The buyer has no interest in accelerating that. So now we come with a system that suddenly reduces that time to 1 day from, let's say, 10 days. Which means that the buyer suddenly has 10 days of extra working capital to finance, which is a real adoption hurdle. So we've seen a lot of electronic platforms to try to crack that, but the adoption really, that's the problem that needs to be solved.
And it gets even more complicated if it's in different currencies, because they start to, often they hedge those bridges and the different currencies, and suddenly you need more working capital. It's quite complicated.
Correct, it's expensive. So I guess what we've shown is that we don't just need technology, we also need to change in market practice and link payment terms much more to the supply chain events instead of the documentation flow.
Yeah, and so same question before I go to the audience questions to you guys. I mean, this is marvelous because I remember 2 years ago or 3 years ago when we started with the conference, the first use case was from ING and it was on letters of credit. Yeah, and so now you've taken like whoops the whole chain into that paradigm. Are you working with any startups who supply niche technology, or is this all home built and home brewn?
To the extent that we're working within market experts, you mean?
Yeah. Well, or I can understand, for instance, doing the user interface for all the players in this game, from truck drivers to guys behind the desk, is a challenge in its own right, and there's people who are experts at that.
Yeah, clearly. I think we're a large bank and we've got a lot of resources, but we cannot never compete with the specialists on the one hand side or the level of capital that others can provide. So you need just to be smart and just find vendors.
And is it home built or did you work with a big tech player?
I think all the experimentation, that's from collaboration, that's homegrown. Yeah. But once you go to production, you have to team up with vendors.
Yeah, okay. Let me see what the audience would love to know more. Why not retrade with the other banks?
Fair enough. Yeah, there are multiple ways to approach that. I think from our perspective, and Arnoud, feel free to comment, I think commodities is a very specific market on the international scene. So let's start there and make it happen. And we truly believe that there will be multiple platforms and ecosystems. So there might be a connection somewhere in the future, but let's just make it happen today.
It is a different thing. Can I see all the questions again? Go back to all my audience questions, please. Thank you. How will you make sure that you're tracking one batch of beans or commodities and that they don't get mixed up? Who asked the question? I'm trying to figure out what you mean. Going to the next one. Sorry, next one, please. I go back. Yeah, here we go. How much cheaper do the soybeans get? So who's the real question, of course, is who's the main benefactor?
Do you want me to answer or do you?
I'll take the one. I think in the end it's very interesting what this is going to do, because it's going to take a lot of transaction costs out of the process. And the question is who is going to benefit, and we believe that because these are all the platforms that we're working on, there's a couple of more that will come out over the course of the year, next year, are all market infrastructure. They're shared open platforms. There's maybe an initial set of companies that invest in creating the change, but it's open. So you will have an enormous amount of competition facilitated by this, and ultimately that should be reflected in prices.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, it will be lower soybean prices.
Yeah.
But that will take some time, of course, to take effect.
Or we pay the farmers more.
Yeah.
Correct.
Exactly.
It's a redistribution of value.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe let's have a look at one more question. Yeah. Does this? Again, I need some more pointing here. If it's your question, please stand up and shout, because we'll figure it out. Does this have any applications for the bank? What do you mean by this? I mean, this is application other than, there you go.
Well, I see it more as a platform where people...
Sorry, you're getting a mic, I think. You can switch this on. Wonderful. We're in a fantastic auditorium, a proper one.
Where people can use the software to trade. I don't think it's for actual commodity traders, because they sell and buy within minutes, I guess. But does this blockchain add any value for the banks and for the consumers of the banks?
Yeah, in other areas.
To me, it looks more like a startup funded by the banks.
No, I think. Shall I take it? Or?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so I guess if you look at this, is an extremely complex business where financing is, and they're huge cargoes. Financing is always part of the transaction. So a bank is always part of the problem and needs to be a part of the solution. We're also focused on the post-trade elements for a number of reasons. That's where the pain is. It's not a marketplace. The deal has already been done, but the pain is in the post-trade process. And if you look at the parties that we're working with, the strategy we take is we'd like to look at specific sectors that are dominated by a number of companies, so we can engage with those companies and drive standardization in the industry. Now, if you engage with Shell, BP, Statoil, Mercuria, Gunvor, and you're talking about North Sea crude, then you've got 70 to 80% of the physical volumes in that market around the table. That brings with it a huge antitrust setting, and antitrust implications that are you need to really manage every step along the way, every single discussion, which is actually quite helpful. But it basically makes it very difficult to talk about trading platforms that have a price-making mechanism, especially if it's a handful of parties doing it. So you focus on the common problems and the interfaces in the operational processes.
Yeah. How fast, my last question, how fast do you think this will scale, and what is the early feedback from the people you work with?
Well, first of all, I think that's a proven concept. So if we're talking about scalability,
I know.
If we're talking about scalability, there's already a process built around it. So
Yeah.
you know, we're targeting the energy market, and we're targeting to go big or go home. That's the idea, right? And how fast that takes off beyond, I think the Louis Dreyfuss transactions say the ambitions are big. You know, we want to move into the agricultural sector. So it'll be a matter of time. And I think the difficulty, the lesson learned here really is not so much the technology. That isn't what is holding us back. That's really an enabler. It's really just gathering and grouping the industry together.
Yeah.
It's really the collaboration, that change in mindset, and to get everybody together who, like Arnoud said, you know, we're normally fierce competitors. So
Yeah, well, and also I think on the trading side, you know, I happen to have a friend who's a trader in styrene on a global scale, so with a big sort of, it's a byproduct of oil, and I hear these conversations the whole time, and they have their own logistics people, their own finance people who do hedging and who do trade finance and whatever. So some people might even see it as a bit of a competition, like if you make this easier, where's my job going to be?
That's true. It could be disintermediating, but I suspect that it also brings a lot of new parties to the market for whom the barriers to entry are too high at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think, especially in the blockchain context, it's helpful to realize that the commodity industry is the original decentralized operating system, really.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much. And with that, I would also like to thank the audience.